Hey, Pastor George, good to see you. Good to be back
Hey,
with
Chris,
you today.
good sir, and good to see you. How are you?
We're doing all right. The sun's out, and I'll take that any day. Makes my day better. We have a little bit different conversation today, talking about work.
Yeah, I was curious, after you've been out of college for a few years, how does your view of career start to shift? Does it match with reality or not? Looking forward to hearing.
Absolutely. So we invited some new friends to join us that have been out of college for a little bit longer, because our previous conversations have been with people that just graduated or people in college. So excited for a new conversation with some new people.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, let's invite them in.
Hi. My name is Fan. I graduated from college 2013. For me, it's more like graduating from grad school recently. And I've been working as a machine learning scientist in Seattle, moving here from the East Coast to here earlier this year.
So my name is Alex. I graduated in technically 2017. That's when I walked, but I actually finished college in December of 2016. So it's been almost 4 years, crazy to think about. I've been working at UPC as an intern with young adults and basically the international community, Global Friends, International Friendship House, Language Institute. And I'm finishing up here in the next couple of weeks. So I'm at the very end of that internship and looking forward to what's next.
So my name is Jacinta Milu. I just graduated my second degree this year from the UW. I also graduated before with my first degree. Nearly 10 years right now, biochemistry. So I worked in research before, in a laboratory research, and ended up in public health programs. I went back to school again and changed my whole career into nursing. So
that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, versatile.
Yeah, for real.
Anna Gibson, yes. So I graduated in 2011 from my undergrad, and 2012 from my master's. From where is a funny question. I went to a different university every year for all 5 of the years. Where I ended up graduating, like what my degree says is Whitworth for my undergrad and then Oxford University for my master's. And I was in education for 5 years and then had a bit of a career pivot and am now in consulting. So quite a different career experience, but that's where I am right now.
Thank you all for being here. Excited for this conversation as we talk about work right now. And I guess even as we continue this conversation of we all talking about when we all graduated and where we're at right now, is there something that has surprised you or that surprises you about your work life that you might not have been expecting when you were in college?
I think so. I'm still a rookie in terms of workforce because I've been in school all my life. So this is my 6-month anniversary of becoming a legal workforce. One thing that stand out to me is there's this ownership in school. If I fail, professors or postdocs or whatever, they will help me out. This is probably somebody else's problem. But I think in work, it's it's really I'm taking on a project myself, and that's it's exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the other thing is just I really enjoy. This used to be true, but it's no longer true in the past 3 or 4 months. It's that after work, I don't have to work. So in my first month, 2.5 months, it's fabulous. So I'll just stop it there and then pass it to another person.
I think the biggest surprise for me has just been kind of the work-life balance. And I feel like that goes in both directions, right? So as Fan was saying, it's interesting when you are done in depending on your job and kind of your specific roles, when you're done with work, when you clock out, you're done. And I think that At least for myself, I think that opens a big window for just doing nothing. You get home after a long work day, and the first thing you want to do is make dinner because you're hungry, right? And so you make dinner, and then maybe you're like, well, I'll just watch a few videos on YouTube or TV or whatever, or chat with some friends. And then you really kind of do a whole lot of nothing. And before you know it, it's 8, 9 p.m. and you have to get up early the next day. And so it's almost time for bed. Maybe that's just me because I'm a morning person. So maybe that doesn't resonate with everybody, but then on the other hand, I've also had positions where in the 3 years that I've been since I graduated, where the work never seemed to stop. And I think especially because we're so connected, even before COVID, we all had our Gmails, our Outlooks, our Slacks, our whatever, and now we're all on Zoom. I think it's so easy to not really set a boundary for yourself. Like I remember having a supervisor in a previous job who would send emails at 2 a.m. Don't know why, but even I had my phone on silent, but I would just check my phone if I woke up in the middle of the night. I'd see that email. I'd get all stressed and panicky, and then it's 2 a.m. and I'm up because I feel like I have to do some sort of, action. So I can show up to work in the morning feeling like, I took care of whatever it was that he wanted taken care of. So I think that's really hard. It's just kind of finding that balance for yourself and where you draw the lines. And even 3 years out from graduation, I don't think I have that down.
Yeah, I'm in a job where I have no control over my time or my schedule. And our days can stretch, and most of the time do stretch 12 to 14 hours. And so the question's actually a lot different for me, which is, what does it actually mean? What does Monday through Friday, what does it mean to be a Christian in that world? If I believe that things like serving my community is important, and I believe that leaving margin in your life is important, if I'm going to quote John Mark Comer right now, and that leaving space in your life and not hurrying through your life, and then what are the prioritized things that I would fill that with, like you said. If I don't get any of that, then what does it look like Monday through Friday for me? And I mean, I'm 3 years into this job, and I haven't even begun to crack the code on that yet. But yeah, the question is really different. I think that means that my weekends then become that, to your question, Alex, all of the good stuff has to then be crammed into the weekends, which means that life feels like a series of peaks and valleys. So that has been an interesting phase of life for me to figure out as well in a different way.
For me, I feel, just adding to what everyone else has said, the aspect that really surprised me is that the workplace is not as predictable as being in school. I think when I was in school, or rather when I'm in school, I'm just recently in school, and before when I was in school, school is pretty straightforward. You know what to input and the output. You know what you is expected of you. In the workplace, there's a lot of uncertainties of how things turn up. Even if you have a job, you have your job responsibilities and roles, but it's very different on what really makes the difference. So the cutting edge is very different. And I felt like the workplace really tries, as a Christian, is a place where has given me a place, my faith has really been tried and tested, and where really the essential character traits of being a Christian are really put into trial, because in the workplace, you learn how to be patient, you learn how to have self-control, you learn how to have wisdom, and wisdom becomes more essential than knowledge sometimes. And you realize that in school, you were able to pick your friends and your inner circle. In the workplace, you don't pick who you work with. You're matched with a team, and you have to really perform with the team. They may not be Christians. They may not be the best of people. And you have to know how to balance between being a Christian and being able to work with all these non-Christians, and probably your boss is also not Christian, and their values are not what you value. And you have that, but it's a very delicate balance. And for me, it was just knowing what to really stand for, knowing how to prioritize my faith and know what is important in my faith and what values I really stand for. Those are very delicate issues and things that you are really tried and tested, but also it gives you room to improve and to learn more.
I am curious. Y'all are in various positions in life, areas of work, and in different. There's been different lengths since you graduated from college and grad school and whatnot. What has it been like for y'all to find a job and particularly find the right job for you? What does that journey look like for each of you, where you're at right now in life? How is finding a job? How's that process been?
I'm happy to start here. I talk I recruit for our company a lot. It's part of our job. And so my answer is fairly well rehearsed at this point, but it's such a testimony to God's favor, I think. When I was little, like age 5 or 6, if you'd asked me what I was going to do when I grew up, I would have always said a teacher. And my sights set on that. And from that age on, that was it. I taught my siblings. That's exactly what I went to school to learn what to teach, history and math. And then I went right from there into my first teaching job. And it was such an interesting spiritual journey, I will say, to figure out by the 5th year that actually maybe that's no longer what I needed to be doing in that season of life. That's two decades of an answer to a question, a very clear answer to a question that all of a sudden was no longer the answer to the question. And the way that I stumbled into this job was outlandish and is a great story and is a great example of the fact that I fully believe that God directs our steps, even though man thinks they plan their course. And I didn't plan this course by any means, but I'm in a job that I didn't even know what it was when I applied. And I barely knew what it was when I started on the first day. And I tell recruits all the time, in secular terminology, of course, that you can't plan these things, and you don't even necessarily know the jobs that are going to exist 5 to 10 years from now. All that you can do is hone your curiosity, your ability to look for answers, and then, of course, within the Christian context, being really tuned in to the Lord's guidance, whether that's a whisper, a gentle nudge, or whether that's like me, like he picked me up and moved me in a different direction. And so I find my life story to be such a testament to, like, I have no control in this, and I find that to be such a delightful thing. So it's wildly different than where I thought I would have been 10 years ago. And I believe this won't be my last career change. I think that's just how God works and how we are as millennials right now also functioning. But I actually find much more comfort in being a Christian because of that. That it's okay, even if the next career, I don't know what it is, or maybe it doesn't exist yet, I can look back and see his faithfulness, and I know that that's going to continue as I go forward.
For me personally, it's a journey where God closes a lot of doors for me. So it's a little bit opposite, because like my understanding of what career I'm going to pick is largely influenced by my parents and greater family environment. They sort of have like this predefined route for me set for me. It's like engineer or like doctor or whatever. But always for me, it's like I always wonder, like, what if I want to do something different? So I spent a lot of time doing other stuff, consulting, finance in my grad school. But for some reason, those doors are closed by God. So eventually just like converging still back to the original route that I set at the very beginning. But turns out I really like it. So, yeah.
I could say what makes a challenge after college, finding the right job. One is lack of mentorship. I think I've had a challenge in that, and I cannot overemphasize the need for mentorship, especially having the right people who can help you see far, because I think that's what mentors do. They put you up at a higher level where you can see farther than you are going, and be able to really see the path clearer. So I believe mentorship was a challenge for me. I realized it later that I needed to have the right mentors in place. And I think this is always emphasized in the school environment networks. network and, keep knowing people. You never know who will be the link for you to have this career or this job. So it could be keep the networks open, have people around you, keep talking to people, and it's not necessarily just going all out to look for people to network for jobs, but also even in the Christian community, in the Bible studies, in church, wherever, there's a lot of networks you can create that could be very useful. And sometimes they don't even lead you to a job, but they give you ideas of what you could do. And that was something. And the other thing is fear for the unknown. And that was really there, especially because my first degree was not in this country. It was in a different country where I come from. And I noticed that, the economy was not doing very well that time. And it was just like right now. And there's a lot of fear of what is there, what's next. And I noticed that with that fear, it kind of puts a ceiling for you to trust God. And it's important to just realize God is faithful and His word is very faithful. His word is true, and realize that for sure what He says in His word, seek the kingdom of God first. And all its righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. There's a lot of promises of God promising us that we shouldn't be afraid, and He's gonna be with us. So just not having the fear, just having faith and believing that all things will work out, and God has you in place. Yeah.
I think there are three things that have really stood out to me in terms of what I like to keep in mind for myself when I'm job searching or I'm kind of trying to navigate the professional world, and what I think might be helpful for others to keep in mind as well. The first is humility. I think that a lot of times, and including myself, right, when we graduate, whether that's with a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD, we feel that we're in some sense ready. Maybe we don't feel ready, but in some sense we feel like I paid all that money for this education. Maybe I'm in debt. Maybe I've had 5 different internships. I've had all of these experiences, and I need to prove myself right now. I need to show this potential employer that I am the right candidate. And I think sometimes that can backfire. Because I think sometimes, and again, this is coming from my own personal experience and how I have approached things in the past. I think sometimes we can feel like this job, that opportunity that's in front of us, we deserve it, right? Like it's ours for the taking. And I think that sometimes that can kind of blind us to maybe some of the deeper work that we need to do in ourselves in order to actually be truly ready. Right? Because there could be something that you're missing or an experience that you need to have first in order, for you to be the right candidate and in order for that to be the right fit. There are the jobs that I've had a couple of years ago that I am so glad that I did not even get an interview for, because I know now with retrospect, and hindsight, I know I would have bombed. Because I was not coming in with the right mindset. I wasn't coming from a place of humility. I was coming from a place of, I deserve this. I think the second thing to keep in mind too is like, just because you're finished with school doesn't mean you're finished learning. And I think that's something that might sound really obvious, but what does it actually look like in practice? I've been through like so many, even in just the 3 years I've been out of college, I've had so many learning experiences. And a lot of times those learning experiences come from mistakes. From really, really bad mistakes. Just if I can briefly describe probably my most embarrassing professional mistake. I was actually working abroad in Beijing for a company that interviews Chinese mainland students studying abroad in the United States. And I was accompanying the CEO of the company to a networking event in Shanghai. And I was basically going to be the interviewer to basically show prospective clients, prospective students, here's what we do. Here's what our interviews are about. And if you step into this room, you'll be able to get a live demo with our interviewer, who is me. So I was really excited to get a free trip to Shanghai, and I got an early morning train so I could explore Shanghai before the event. And my one task was to go to we had like an office in Shanghai. I had to get like a suitcase with equipment, like cameras, microphones, all of that stuff. and then take that to the hotel so we could have that ready to go to the event later. So I went to the room. I saw there were 2 suitcases. I grabbed one. I took it. They were both identical suitcases, right? Well, we get to the event. I open the suitcase. It turns out the suitcase that I brought was full of junk equipment that either wasn't working or pieces to equipment in case of, needed repairs. And this is during the event. The CEO is there too. He comes to the room and I'm freaking out. I'm literally about to have a heart attack. And I just look at him and I say, I am so sorry. I didn't even know what to say. I was just like, I am so incredibly sorry. And he just looked at me and with the most, I don't know if he was so frustrated that he could not actually be mad or if he was just a really kind, empathetic soul. But he said, Alex, I know you are going to learn from this. I know you will learn from this. And what did that teach me? Well, professionally, that taught me always, cross your T's, dot your I's, and make sure you have everything, down. But it also taught me the importance of just making sure that you're doing everything you need to do your job correctly. You could be as good and this I think kind of ties back to the humility thing. You could be really good at your job, but that doesn't mean that you're perfect. And that doesn't mean that you have it all inside here. And that sometimes you need to listen to others. You need to learn from others. You need to realize that other people have so much more experience than you and come from different backgrounds and different lived experiences that are valid and worthy of listening to. And if you're just trusting your gut through the entire process, you're not going to learn anything when you should be learning a lot of things. And one more thing really quickly, and this is going to probably tie into another question I have a feeling you're going to ask, is professionally speaking, Chris has sent us questions. Professionally speaking, just because someone has said not now, it doesn't mean never.
Some of y'all touched on this already, and I want to give you the opportunity to elaborate on it. But how has the work experience for each of you been shifted or looked different in this season of COVID-19 and in this new normal that we've been experiencing over the last few months?
For as I mentioned before, it's just like the boundary is like blurring out. I don't think it exists now. It's not even a matter of blurring or not. It's back to grad school, but the difference in grad school is you go back home, although you're working, you work a little bit, you can still hang out with friends. Now it's like, finish my work, and now I'm just like, okay, what do I do? I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And I just come back to my computer and I'm just staring at my code. And it's not being productive. Eventually, I used to, when I'm still working in the office, I have this journal recording what I'm doing every day and what I'm going to do tomorrow. It's like a little nice chart thing. Now it doesn't it's just completely disappeared. I don't even remember what I did last week. I think that's just how, it changes the way I approach work. I think that's definitely something that needs to be improved on.
A lot of my peers kind of go through a bit of a crisis of identity and their philosophy around work altogether. Because our job usually is, I work the same hours normally, but we are traveling and the days are kind of broken up with meetings and with team events, and the company and our field in generally tries to offset long hours and high pressure and high stress with a lot of extravagance, lots of expense accounts, blah, blah, blah. And it's been really interesting to see, if you strip all that away, what's left. And what's left is not satisfying to people. And so it's been interesting because I'm having a lot of conversation with my peers around, is this worth it? Is this lifestyle actually worth it? And do I actually like what I do on a day-to-day basis? Do I actually think that working 70 hours a week is going to satisfy me in the long run? And most of them are obviously answering no. And so my theory is it's because we sit at our kitchen tables and around 5 p.m. every night. Right now, we look outside and all of these families are playing with their kids and they're chalking up the sidewalk, and we're getting ready for a second shift for another probably 6 or so hours. And I actually think this is maybe the healthiest thing for us in a very weird way, which is bringing people face to face with the sort of raw nature of, am I my job and nothing else? Or do I actually think I need other things in my life to be a healthy, holistic human? And it's prompting those conversations. So I sort of wonder whether after all this is over, we're going to see a bit of a movement, maybe in our generation more broadly, but certainly in my industry, to ask, where else could I be doing substantive work that I love and I'm passionate about with people that I love and I'm passionate about, but that doesn't take up all of my life? So in that sense, it's brutal, but maybe it's prompting the right conversations.
I think it's had a huge, I mean, it's, as you, Chris, and George know, working at UPC, it's had a huge impact because we're now all on Zoom and on online platforms. It was really interesting because at the beginning of February, that's when I started actually really engaging with the Language Institute, and we were meeting in person, and I was helping Valerie, and Kara, kind of set up for class, and I was sitting in on classes. And at that point, I was just kind of learning. I was just, because I, like you, Anna, I'm very interested in education, and I feel like that's kind of a calling that I'm trying to explore. And I wanted to learn what it meant to actually be like a teacher, an English teacher. And 1 month later, everything shut down, and all of a sudden we have classes that may or may not even be happening, because most of our volunteers, if not all of them, are retirees who were very, very, very uncomfortable with the idea of trying to navigate the world of online learning. We had a lot of pushback when we even suggested, having classes online. I wouldn't say everyone pushed back, but, understandably so. It was kind of a new tool for everyone. And I think to learn it in such a short amount of time, we had 2 weeks until, the beginning of the new quarter, spring quarter should have started. And in those 2 weeks, what I did is I sat down individually, one-on-one with a lot of these teachers over Zoom. And I spent just a lot of time training them, like how to use Zoom, how to log on, right? Breakout rooms, whiteboard features, all of that good stuff. And then we started spring quarter, and that's when I realized how good God is, which is kind of funny to say because we had just like shut down everything, right? But all of these teachers who, were so hesitant were just performing so wonderfully. They were just so confident. They were, and not just from the teacher side, but you had students as well who were just showing up to every single class. We had like 100% attendance. And because we were online, we had students who had gone back home, because a lot of our students are J1 visiting scholars who are here for a short term to do research or teach, and then they go back to their home countries. We had people zooming in from Taiwan, from Japan, from I think mainland China in a couple of instances, and how it allowed everyone to just connect with each other. And I think because we were in this space where we were all alone in a way, some people couldn't leave their homes, given their age or, kind of underlying conditions that they may or may not have had. And I think for a lot of people, this became a really necessary space to just connect and be with each other. Even if we're in a structured classroom setting, we would still have time at the beginning to do check-ins, or we would have, topical discussions on, the news and like other stuff. And I think COVID actually allowed us to succeed in a way that we wouldn't have if classes were normal, right? If we were just meeting in person.
That kind of leads us into this next question really well. So how has Jesus just been in the midst of you and your work and your life and your career?
I think when I graduated my first degree, I went into the research lab, hoping to be a great research scientist, and put in my whole heart, vigor, my energies all into science. And after a while, I realized that may not be what really matters. That ambition does have a place, but I realized that its work is really not just about me and what I have to do. It's really about God. And I remember these words in Colossians that whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as if you're working for the Lord and not for human masters. It is the Lord who gives us this place. So you will get an inheritance and a reward from the Lord for your work. And I realized that my life, my Christian life was more important. My Christian faith was more important than what I was achieving in my career. And that was really it took a while to realize that, because it was a milestone for me, because I noticed that my time with the Lord had slowly drifted, slowly waned. My passion for the things that we do as Christians, like fellowship, spending time in the Word of God, prayer, it's slowly just been taken away by too much work. And, you can just go out and about having to concentrate on work and forget everything about all these things that make you. And it took a while to realize that I was actually very drifting away from what is essential. And that was a turning point for me. So I realized that I had to learn that I need to really know what is my priority. What is priority in life? Because career is something, but there's a lot of other things. There's faith, there's family, there's so many things. And you really have to get your priorities in place. Not just because career can really take part of you, it can consume you, and ambition can really consume you furthermore. But it's important to really have your priorities in place and know what really matters for you. And so for me, I really did have to take that time and know what really matters. And what I wish someone had told me is to really study the Word of God before going out in the career world. I really wish I had known what God expects of me and what it means to really know the Word of God. And it took me a while to read the book of Daniel, and I loved how it gave me a way. And I believe that was a way Jesus was giving me direction in my life, and seeing how Daniel was able to balance career and his faith in a way that he didn't fail in any. He could still pray 3 times a day, and he could still perform his job very well and still move up the ranks. So I started realizing how I really need to follow that example of Daniel and be able to know what really matters. And the other thing was having friends, inner circle, maintaining close relationship with godly friends, because as I said before, that in the career place you never know who you are going to interact with. So just having friends who I could be accountable to and tell exactly what's happening in my life, that was really useful, because when you're alone, you just tend to drift away from very essential things. And I could tell that from Daniel also, the fact that he had these 3 friends who he could just talk to and, share whatever he was facing. And that was what helped him to win lots of battles that they went through in Babylon.
For me, it's less about meddling. For me personally, it's probably a better word. It's like encouraging. Because like my route is like, in terms of direction, it's pretty straightforward. But in terms of velocity, it's actually kind of like ups and downs. Sometimes just get stuck for a long time. I remember getting into grad school, it was a challenge. Even the grad school process is like, it's not always uphill. Sometimes it's like downhill, and it just get stuck in the downhill low point for a long time period of time. And Jesus just even though it fails, now I look back, all of those failures sort of gives me a new perspective. Like I have this false expectation, almost, that it's always gonna be successful. I know it's like a fairy tale. Your career is always gonna go up, but that's really not the case. I think in that sense, it's sort of like the way Jesus meddling, and also just like encouraging me throughout my journey.
So about a year ago, May 2019, I was fired from a job. And this was the job that was supposed to jumpstart my career. I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, good benefits, good salary. Yes, I made it, right? And God had other plans. And I just remember in like the first day, the first week, even the first month, I just remember kind of sitting in this just, space of embarrassment, of feeling, inadequate, of just, wondering what the heck am I going to do? If this is the job that's supposed to jumpstart my career and I was fired from it, does that mean that this is not the right, field for me? Was all of what I did before a waste? All of these big, like, existential questions. And that's when about 3 weeks later, Polly Orioka, who serves as the director of missional communities and young adult ministries, reached out to me about an internship at UPC. That would run for about a year from June 2019 to June 2020. And I remember thinking, like, I think, Chris, you were talking about earlier about just, or this wasn't in this meeting. Sorry, this was our previous meeting. Sometimes you take a job because you need a job. And I think that was where I was at. I'm like, I need a source of finances, right? But I didn't realize how much being at UPC would like really change my life and my trajectory. Before I joined UPC, I was on the spiritual journey, but I would definitely consider myself more kind of like at the beginning. And so I remember thinking, like, how am I even, supposed to work at a church if I don't know the ins and outs of the Bible? Or I haven't even considered working at a church. Like, isn't this kind of just a, waste of my professional time? Not that there's no value to church, but in terms of, the goals that I had set out for myself, I didn't see this as kind of being, helpful to what I want to do. Mainly being, international education. And through this internship, I can't even, I could write an entire essay, an entire book on everything I've learned, all the places I've been. I mean, one of the things that Polly and I did first is we went to Guatemala for about a week to kind of learn how one of our partner organizations, Agros, how they support and uplift and empower rural communities, right? Which is a beautiful thing. And I'd never been to Latin America. And I went to Chicago to attend a conference on decentering whiteness in the church, which has really allowed me, and conversations I had with Polly and books I've had with Polly, which has allowed me to, while not definitely far from perfect, engage in the kind of conversations that our entire country, and in some ways the world, is having now after the murder of George Floyd. Because I had been through this kind of process of cultural awakening, whatever you want to call it. And having the experience of the Language Institute, training teachers to teach online and being part of these classes and engaging with global friends has actually, ironically, helped me to be a better educator than I was before, because now I've had such an integral role in the classroom. So all of these things combined have really made me more confident professionally, have actually made me be able to name exactly what I want to do after this internship is over, whereas a year ago I was kind of lost. And it's made me realize that, again, I think a lot of people in this room have kind of said in different words, just because God closes a door doesn't mean that there's another one that he's holding wide open for you. And I think it's hindsight, it's having gone through these experiences that made me realize this detour that God has taken me was a necessary one, because at the end of this path is that open door that he's holding wide open for me. And the door that I thought was closing on me, the door that was open that closed, was actually not the door I was supposed to go into. I walked in the wrong door, and now I'm where I need to be. So I think it's just such a beautiful thing to have,
I can finish this off, I suppose. When I was teaching at a couple of different schools, but they were all openly Christian. And when I left education, I thought for sure there is no way I'm going to have as tangible, as visible of a ministry as I did here. I mean, I was preaching Jesus from the front of the classroom. I was working with autistic students and a lot of suicidal students, and the impact was just tangible and raw every day. And the improvement was so visible in front of me. And I thought, I don't know what it's going to be like to move to a world in which I don't have that visible impact anymore. And I certainly can't, preach Christ from the front of the boardroom by any means. And what I've been delighted to find is my ministry went underground, but is as strong as ever. I've just realized how different Christians are from the rest of the world. And I think to your point, Jacinta, there's definitely something about the balance of how do I winsomely, illustrate my faith and my values and the Jesus that I profess to follow, while also loving others who are very different from me. And so there's always that walking of the line, but we are radically different than the rest of the world if we're walking right. And that's intriguing to people, and it's confusing to people, and they're drawn to it, I found. And it's not that I do anything special, and I'm by no means perfect, but it's even especially maybe how I handle the imperfections that people are really intrigued by. So little things my coworkers call me out for that really stand out. Not swearing is a really big one that for some reason they just really notice. And it's those 2 a.m. meltdowns over an Excel spreadsheet that's not working, where we get to really talk through, let's talk about the weight that you have given this job in your life, and let's talk about your identity, and let's talk about what actually matters. And it's a different ministry than preaching to kids about Jesus incarnate, but it is a ministry nonetheless. So I think that's where I am learning daily that I need to not associate Christian ministry with Christian organizations. And I'm walking through the same stuff Martin Luther went through this centuries ago. I know that, but I'm relearning it now, that you can be just as faithful in the secular world. It just looks really different. And it's maybe a daily process that it's different day to day. It's different peer to peer of my friends. They each need a little bit of a different side of Jesus. But my motto since I started at this company is to be life, light, which are two things that I feel like my peers don't really have right now. And they are defined by status and money and promotions, and I'm untethered from all of that. And it gives me levity in a world where they feel very weighted down by those things. And so being able to speak truth and just remind people, like, there's a world outside of this company. You have value outside of whether or not you're promoted. You will be okay if you don't make the salary. Some of those very simple things I found to be pretty powerful for my peers. So just continuing to be creative with ways to love them as they need to be loved by Christ right now.
I wish to just add something slight that resonated with me with what Alex said about doors opening. That sometimes it's not what the Lord wants you to go into. And I can just say that one of the things I've learned is it's important to really listen to God. It's important to take time and listen, because sometimes the doors that really open, sometimes it's not what we are being called into. And I've been in jobs that I last wondered, why did I even sign up for this job? It was so crucial for me when I wanted it, and I really, did well in the interview and I got the job. But later, in retrospect, I just realized, I feel like this was not what I really wanted to do, and what was God really wanted me to do. So I just learned that it's good to really go for the jobs that are open, but it's also good to listen to God first. Let God guide you, because sometimes it's not, you might jump into what might not be very necessary for you.
Yeah, that's a good word. Sometimes there are open doors that are not what God wants, and sometimes we are supposed to kick doors in that are closed, but it's actually, I think of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, and that was definitely a closed door, and God said, you're going through that one, right?
It's an honor to get to hear each of your stories and the ways that you're processing through life. I just want each of you to know, I'll speak for Pastor George in this too, we hold that very sacredly and dearly, that each of your stories that you shared. Pastor George, you got any final questions before I ask for final parting shots from each of our panelists?
No, I'm just amazed at how rich the wisdom is in this circle, and I thank each and every one of you for sharing your experience and being vulnerable. I think this is going to be very helpful to people.
I think it's a lie that millennials have been sold, that you will find your satisfaction in your job, and that your job has to be your passion in life. And so I say this having tried this. I say this having mentored a lot of people who are also working through this, that your passion and your vocation may be different things. Your vocation may change, your passion may change, and the goal is, I think, daily faithful walk with the Lord. That's my parting shot.
So good.
The ministry continues in the workforce, in the workspace, and is maybe a little bit different from what I experienced in the school, but it's just like a lot more different facets that I can work on. Relationship with workers, how I can work professionally, a lot of those details. And yeah, to be a light and salt in this particular space requires a lot of wisdom and continual walk with God.
You will make mistakes at work. You will. It's normal. I would even argue it's healthy because you learn from those mistakes. And I think if you want to gauge the true like leadership around you, it's how your supervisors, the people above you in the company's hierarchy react to your mistakes. They freak out and they yell at you. That's a sign of bad leadership. But if they use those mistakes as an opportunity to walk alongside you and to teach you and to guide you, that shows that they have your best interests in heart, and those are the type of people you want to work for. So consider that when you're job searching and when you're kind of interacting in the professional world.
For me, I think the most one of the things to remember is that it will not always be easy, and as a Christian, we have suffering is also part of the whole thing. It's part of our walk, and every day we are called to carry our cross and follow Jesus. That doesn't mean that it will always be as smooth as we think, and that might just be, you might face hardship in the job. You might face hardship while getting it to get even a job or in finding the right career, and that's all is that the Lord is working it all out for your good, and everything will work out for the glory, for your good, if you are really walking with God.
Well, Pastor George, thank you for your time, and everyone on this conversation, thank you so much. Like I said, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to hear your stories and to learn from and with y'all. So
thanks, Chris.
You.
Thanks for leading us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. You can take off. Yeah, thank you all.